Welcome back, everyone. Today's deep dive is going to be pretty interesting. We're going to be looking at how we can keep our hearts pure,
Oh, yeah.
especially in today's world.
Yeah.
Our source material for this is an article called "How Can We Keep a Pure Heart in Today's World?"
Okay.
And one thing that really stood out to me was the author actually stopped using Facebook personally
Really?
because of how it was affecting them.
Wow.
That's a big step,
It
isn't
really
it, to
is.
take?
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder, like,
Yeah,
what was it that pushed them to disconnect entirely?
yeah, what was so troubling?
Right. And I think that's what I found so interesting about the article is it's not just some theory or, kind of
Yeah.
a high-level look at it.
Mhm.
This is someone who is actually struggling with
Yes.
this in their own life.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great place to start is like, what are some of the challenges
Okay.
that the author highlights?
Yeah.
And the first one is this idea that the world today can feel like a minefield for our hearts and minds. Oh, yeah, we can see that.
Just think about it, information overload, constant judgment, scandals all over the place.
Yeah.
Just a lot to process.
Yeah, for sure.
And the author actually asks these questions.
Well, really?
Right at the beginning. Have you ever judged your neighbor?
Hmm.
Or said or thought things a child of God shouldn't?
Oh, wow.
And I think it's such a great way to draw the reader in.
Yeah.
Because it forces you to kind of look inward and be like,
Yeah.
okay, wait, am I struggling with this too?
Right. Yeah. Oh, I see.
It's like a gut check.
Yeah.
Right, because who hasn't felt those pangs of judgment
Total
or
alarm.
negativity at some
Mhm.
point? So it makes you realize this isn't just some,
Yeah.
theological concept. This is
Yeah.
something that we're dealing with every day.
Right. Yeah. Everyday life.
Yeah, and one of the things that the author points to as like a major amplifier
Okay.
of these struggles is,
Yeah.
you guessed it,
I think I know where this is going.
social media.
That's
Of course, they talk about how it can be a breeding ground for comparison,
Oh, yeah.
for judgment, for even participating
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
harmful conversations.
For sure.
In fact, they connect these behaviors to the fruits of the flesh,
Oh, wow.
described in Galatians 5:13-26.
That's interesting because most people, when they think of fruits of the flesh, they're thinking of,
Right.
the more obvious sins, like sexual immorality and things like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's all connected.
And that connection, I think, is so insightful.
Yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar with that passage, fruits of the flesh are basically negative
Yeah.
traits or behaviors that go against the
Yeah.
Spirit of God.
Like what kinds of things?
So things like anger, jealousy, gossip, strife.
Okay.
And when you think about it, social media really does give a platform for those things to spread.
Oh, yeah.
It just creates the perfect environment.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. You're constantly bombarded with other people's perfect lives or seemingly perfect lives.
Right.
It makes you,
So curated.
curated. It makes you feel
Yeah.
bad about yourself.
Yeah.
It can lead to comparison, jealousy, all those things.
Totally. And then you have the anonymity
Yeah.
factor where people can say things that they would never say to your face.
Yeah.
And then there's the echo chamber effect.
Yeah. You're just surrounded by people who agree with you.
Right. And so it just reinforces
Yeah.
all those negative things.
Makes sense.
So no wonder the author felt the need to just step away from Facebook entirely.
Yeah.
They recognized that, to guard their heart,
Yeah.
they needed to limit their exposure to that environment,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is so powerful
Yeah. I can see that.
because it's a reminder that sometimes you have to set boundaries, even with things that seem very normal,
Right.
in our everyday lives.
Yeah. And even things that we think are good,
Right.
keeping up with people and staying connected,
Exactly.
sometimes it can be detrimental.
Yeah. And this leads us to the heart of the article, really.
Okay.
What does the Bible say about keeping a pure heart?
Yeah, that's the big question.
The author focuses on Matthew 5:8,
Okay.
where Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God."
That's a beautiful verse.
It is a beautiful verse, but it also raises some questions.
Yeah, what does it even mean to be pure in heart?
Exactly. And what does it mean to see God?
Yeah.
Is this about having some kind of vision, or is it something deeper?
Right.
And that's where the author's interpretation gets really interesting.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
They argue that this verse isn't just about some far-off reward
Uh-huh.
in the afterlife. It's about experiencing God's presence and kingdom now.
Wow. So it's about a present reality.
Yes. So it's about having a kind of spiritual clarity, a way of seeing the world
Okay.
that allows us to perceive God's presence in everyday life.
That makes sense.
And the author suggests that a pure heart is essential
Oh.
for this kind of spiritual sight. They argue that all of that negativity, the judgment, all the things we were just talking about,
The fruits of the flesh.
the fruits of the flesh, they actually cloud our vision.
Oh, so they're like a barrier
They're a barrier.
between us and God.
And it makes it harder to see God at work in our lives.
Wow, that's powerful.
It's like we're so focused on the things that divide us that we miss the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the beauty, the love, the interconnectedness of it all.
Yeah.
And so by focusing on purifying our hearts, we can actually start to see
Yeah.
God's presence more clearly.
That's a great point.
So we've established that keeping a pure heart is essential, but how do we actually do that?
Right. That's the big question.
The good news is the article doesn't leave us hanging.
Okay. Good.
It offers some concrete advice
Okay.
based on biblical wisdom,
All right. Let's dive into that.
which we'll get to after a quick break.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.
Can't wait.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about like the practical side of keeping a pure heart.
Mm-hmm.
And the author gives us some really solid
Okay.
advice grounded in scripture.
Awesome.
So let's jump into that.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Okay, so the first one is to guard our hearts,
Okay.
which Proverbs 4.23 tells us is the wellspring of life.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and it really gets to the heart.
That's really.
Literally, right.
Yeah.
It's saying that everything we do, every choice we make, every word we speak
Yeah.
flows from the state of our hearts.
It all starts there.
So guarding our hearts isn't just about avoiding bad things.
Right.
It's about cultivating this like inner environment
Yeah.
that's conducive to spiritual growth.
That makes sense.
So it's not just about what we don't do, but it's also about what we do.
Yeah. What we're putting in.
To nurture our hearts.
Exactly.
And the article suggests that one of the most important ways to do this is to be mindful
Okay.
of what we're consuming.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't just mean food and drink. I
Yeah.
mean information, entertainment.
The conversations we have.
Yeah, the conversations we have.
It all affects us.
Absolutely. It's like being on a spiritual diet, right?
Oh, I like that.
You're choosing to feed your mind and soul with things that are going to nourish you
Yeah.
rather than things that deplete you.
That's good.
You know, I remember when I was going through a really tough time
Yeah.
and I realized I was just constantly consuming negative news,
Oh, yeah.
getting into social media debates, and it just left me feeling
Oh, yeah. That'll do it.
drained and discouraged.
I've been there.
It's so easy to get caught in that cycle.
It really is.
You think you're staying informed, but really it's just,
Noise.
yeah, noise cluttering your mind and heart.
Yeah. Just weighing you down.
And it was only when I consciously chose to limit my exposure to those things and started focusing on
Yeah.
more uplifting content
Yeah.
that I started to feel better.
I can see that.
It was like I was giving my heart a chance to breathe.
Yeah. To heal.
Yeah, to heal.
That's really powerful.
And I think it's such a powerful testament to the fact that guarding our hearts is so important.
Yeah.
It's not about being naive or ignoring the realities of the world.
Right.
It's about choosing to focus on things
Yeah.
that cultivate hope and peace.
Exactly.
Speaking of choosing wisely,
Okay.
the next piece of advice from the article
Okay.
is to think before you speak post.
Oh, that's good. Especially nowadays.
Right. It's like
It's so easy to
so easy, just fire off a comment or a post
just say whatever you want.
without thinking.
Yeah.
And this echoes Ephesians 4.29,
Okay.
where Paul encourages us to use our words
Yeah.
to build others up.
Instead of tearing them down.
Exactly. And I think what's so interesting about this
Yeah.
is it's not just about being nice
Right.
or avoiding conflict.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that our words have power.
Oh, yeah.
They shape the world around us, but they also shape our inner state.
That's a good point.
So every time we say something negative or judgmental,
Yeah.
it's like we're planting a seed of negativity.
Of negativity in our own hearts.
We're poisoning ourselves.
Yeah. And on the other hand, when we choose to speak words of kindness and encouragement,
Yeah.
it cultivates an environment of love and peace.
That's a much better environment to live in.
Right. It's a reminder that our words are not just empty vessels.
Yeah,
They carry weight,
for sure.
and they can either heal or harm.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the author's third piece of advice,
Okay.
which is to choose our company wisely.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this comes from 1 Corinthians 15.33,
Okay.
which warns us that bad company corrupts good character.
It's true, though.
It's true, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that verse can feel a little harsh.
Yeah. I can see that.
But it's really just a profound truth
Yeah.
about human nature.
We're so influenced by the people around us.
We are social creatures, and the people we surround ourselves with
Yeah.
inevitably influence us.
For better or for worse.
So if we're constantly surrounded by negativity and
Yeah.
cynicism,
It's going to be really hard to keep a pure heart.
yeah, that makes sense.
You know, I've always struggled with this one
Really?
because I tend to be a people pleaser.
Oh, yeah.
So I want everyone to like me.
Yeah.
And I find myself going along with things that I don't really agree with.
Or spending time with people.
Yeah, just because I don't want to rock the boat.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, and it speaks to that deeper fear
Yeah.
of rejection and loneliness.
Absolutely.
But I think what's important to remember is setting boundaries
Yeah.
with people who are not good for our spiritual well-being
Yeah.
is not selfish. It's actually an act of self-care.
It is. You got to take care of yourself.
And you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's so true.
Right. And it's not about cutting people out of our lives.
Right.
It's about being discerning
Yeah,
about
you let in.
who we allow to influence us. And
Exactly.
sometimes that means creating some distance
Yeah.
from people who are constantly bringing
You down.
negativity into our lives.
Yeah. It's for your own good.
And this leads us to the final piece of advice
Okay. Let's hear it.
from the article, which is perhaps the most challenging.
Oh, boy.
It's about limiting our exposure
Okay.
to things that negatively affect our hearts.
Oh, wow. So this is where the Facebook thing comes in.
Exactly. And I think this is where it gets really personal, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves
Uh-huh.
is to step away from things that are harming us,
Even if they're normal.
even if they're considered normal or acceptable.
That's hard.
It is hard.
Because you feel like you're missing out.
Right.
Or you're being judged.
Yeah, but that's where I think courage comes in.
Yeah. You have to be brave.
You have to have the courage to say no
to say no.
to things that are not serving you,
Even when it's hard.
even when it's hard.
Absolutely.
And that courage, I think, comes from a deep trust in God
Yeah.
and a willingness to put our spiritual well-being first.
That's so important.
So it's about having faith that when we let go of the things that are hindering us,
Mm-hmm.
God will fill that void
With something better.
with something better.
Yeah.
So this is all super fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what are the benefits of all of this?
Yeah. Why bother?
Like, why is it worth fighting this constant battle
To keep our hearts pure.
to keep our hearts pure?
That's a good question. We should explore that.
So we've talked about the challenges and the tools, but now I'm really curious, like, what's the payoff?
Yeah. What do we actually gain?
Why is a pure heart so valuable?
Yeah. Especially in a world like ours.
Right. And the author actually suggests that a pure heart isn't just about avoiding negativity or feeling good. It actually allows us to see the world differently.
Yeah. They talk about being able to see God in the everyday.
Right. Which I love that phrase,
It's beautiful.
but I'm not sure I fully get it.
Yeah. What does that even mean?
Yeah. Is it about having some kind of mystical vision?
Not necessarily. I think it's more about cultivating a sensitivity to God's presence.
Okay.
In the ordinary, in those little moments.
So not just the big events, but like,
Right. The everyday stuff.
yeah, the everyday stuff.
The mundane.
Okay.
Imagine for a second that our hearts are like lenses
Okay.
through which we view the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when those lenses are clouded with negativity judgment.
Yeah. All those fruits of the flesh.
Exactly. It's like looking through a dirty window.
Oh, I see.
Everything seems distorted,
Yeah, blurry.
lifeless.
Yeah, you can't see clearly.
But when we cultivate a pure heart,
Uh,
it's like cleaning that window.
okay.
Suddenly we start to notice the beauty in a flower,
Wow.
the kindness of a stranger,
Yeah.
the warmth of the sun.
It's like those things were always there,
They were?
but we just couldn't see them.
We were too distracted.
Yeah, we were too focused on the negative.
Right.
And so the shift in our perception
Yeah.
affects everything.
It really does, starting with our relationships.
Oh, yeah. How so?
When our hearts are pure, we're less likely to judge others harshly. We're more likely to forgive,
So we're more understanding.
more compassionate.
Yeah.
It's like we're extending the same grace that
Yeah.
we've received from God.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing people not for their flaws,
Right.
but for their potential.
Yeah. And so that changes how we interact with people.
Absolutely. Instead of approaching relationships with fear,
Right.
we come with openness and generosity.
It doesn't mean we become doormats,
No, of course not.
but it means we're choosing to see the best in people.
Right. We believe in them.
We believe in their ability to change.
Yeah.
And the author also talks about how a pure heart affects our decision-making.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
Right, because when our hearts are pure, our motives are purer.
Exactly. We're not driven by selfishness,
Agreed.
power,
Yeah, we make choices that are aligned with our values.
and with God's will.
It's like our inner compass is more accurate.
It's been recalibrated.
Yeah, and it guides us to make better choices.
That benefit everyone.
Right, not just ourselves.
Exactly.
And this leads to another beautiful point the author makes.
Well, what's that?
A pure heart allows us to be a light in the world.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
What do they mean by that?
Well, imagine a candle in a dark room.
Okay.
That light doesn't just stay in one spot.
Right, it spreads.
It pushes back the darkness.
Yeah.
Creates warmth and safety. So when our hearts are filled with love,
Compassion. Joy.
it overflows into the world.
It radiates outward.
Our words and actions inspire others.
It's like we become beacons of hope
Exactly.
in a world that really needs it.
It does.
And I think that's the ultimate reward
yeah.
of striving for a pure heart.
It's not just about us.
Right? It's about making a difference.
It's about giving back.
Yeah. Leaving the world better than we found it.
And as we wrap up, I just want to encourage everyone listening.
Yeah.
This journey to a pure heart, it's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about progress.
It's about taking small steps.
Every day.
Yeah. Allowing God to work in our hearts.
And remembering that this is a lifelong journey.
So we're never going to arrive.
No, it's a constant process.
But it's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I hope you found it encouraging.
I know I have.
And I hope you'll join us next time.
For another deep dive into the things that matter most.
Until then, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep diving deep.